I never expected the day would come when my own family would declare the house I've been paying for 7 years was not mine. Last Sunday, in the dining room filled with familiar faces and forced smiles, Mom said it plainly. The Webster house was going solely to Rachel. "That's final," she said. And the room nodded in agreement as if it were some natural truth. But I sat there, silent, a tight knot forming in my stomach. 75% of the bills, every mortgage payment, the taxes, it was all on me. Yet the family saw Rachel as the rightful heir, the golden child who deserved everything. I'm Lexi Webster, 31 years old, a forensic financial analyst by trade. For 8 years, I've cracked numbers and uncovered truths for a living. But here, in my own family, my value is invisible. Daniel, my husband, the only person who truly understands this silent battle, has been my steady anchor. He reminds me quietly, his voice soft but firm, "You have more power than they realize." And he's right. I hold the property documents, the deeds in my name, the financial records that prove I've kept this family's home afloat. I haven't brought them out yet. I want to believe that things can still change, that Rachel's favor with our parents is just a phase, that maybe one day I'll be recognized for the backbone I've been, the one who carries the weight so quietly. But beneath that hope, a sinking feeling grows, a heavy shadow telling me this is deeper than sibling rivalry. For now, I carry it all silently, waiting, watching, wondering if anyone else will ever see the truth. When we were kids, it wasn't always this painful. But I remember the exact moment the line was drawn. I was 10, standing backstage after a piano recital, where Rachel had just been praised as the star performer. Mom's voice was loud and proud. "That's my shining girl." Meanwhile, I was crying over a bad math grade, and her response was cold. "Stop being so sensitive." That was the start. Rachel was the golden child, every accomplishment spotlighted, every mistake overlooked or forgiven with a smile. I was the quiet, responsible one, the fallback. I remember one particularly sharp sting. When Rachel got a full college scholarship, Mom made a big deal out of it right after I confessed I was struggling to pay tuition. Instead of help or encouragement, I got a cold look and the painful reminder that Rachel worked harder. I told myself it was just Mom's way of showing love, tough but fair. But it wasn't fair at all. This favoritism made me invisible, like my struggles, my sacrifices, just didn't count. That pattern didn't break. Over the years, Rachel's successes were public celebrations. Mine were silent, unnoticed. I paid for tutoring she never needed, stayed late working extra hours to cover family expenses, always quietly stepping back so she could shine. Mom and Dad never questioned the imbalance. I learned to accept my role as the invisible one, the backup, the shadow behind the spotlight. It shaped how I saw myself, not as a rightful member of the family's legacy, but as a support act, always second best. The ache of being overlooked grew beneath the surface, but I kept quiet because I loved my family. I told myself it was worth it to keep the peace, to hold us together. But every overlooked achievement felt like a small wound, a reminder that my place was never fully acknowledged. For 7 years, I've been the silent provider, paying $1,800 a month for the mortgage plus taxes, over $210,000 in total. That's vacations I didn't take, promotions I declined because I needed the stability, late nights crunching numbers while Rachel flaunted new dresses and invitations to galas. Daniel often asks if it's worth it, if I'm just burning myself out for nothing. But I wanted them to see, really see, that I was contributing, that I mattered. Instead, it felt like my sacrifices were invisible. Rachel acted like the house was hers by birthright, and Mom reinforced that narrative. At family gatherings, Rachel would joke about freeloaders, smirking as I quietly handed over another check. Daniel knows I have the deed in my name. Years ago, when Rachel was careless with her finances, I had it transferred quietly. It's my secret power, my ace card, held close for the right moment. The main players are clear: Rachel, the golden child; Mom and Dad, the enablers; Daniel, my steadfast ally in the background. The breaking point felt small, but sharp. At Aunt Evelyn's 70th birthday dinner, surrounded by family and old friends, Rachel said, Lexi's just lucky mom covers her bills. With a smirk that cut deeper than any knife, the room laughed awkwardly, and I felt the sting like a slap, implying I was a burden, not a provider. Mom didn't say a word to defend me. For a moment, I froze, my throat tight. Then quietly, I said, "Actually, I've been paying the mortgage." The laughter died instantly, replaced by uncomfortable silence. Rachel rolled her eyes, dismissing me with a look that said, "Don't make a fuss." Someone changed the subject quickly, and I felt exposed, humiliated. But I told myself maybe Rachel was just stressed, that it was a bad joke, that I was overreacting. Still, a seed of doubt took root. Maybe this wasn't sibling teasing. It was something more cruel. I left the room early, voice barely a whisper, and Daniel followed. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, but inside, I knew I'd set a boundary. Small as it was, I wouldn't stay silent forever, but for now, I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. I could tell Rachel noticed my small pushback, the subtle way I'd finally spoken up at Aunt Evelyn's party, and she didn't like it one bit. Within the week, the atmosphere shifted in the family. Whispers began swirling like smoke, invisible but choking. I overheard Mom on the phone, voice low but sharp enough to carry. "Lexi's making things difficult again," she said, her tone heavy with disappointment, as if I were some obstinate child. Soon, more insidious rumors emerged. I was supposedly scheming to steal the family inheritance, painted as some greedy, ungrateful outsider. It was surreal hearing this from people who barely acknowledged my existence before. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly questioning my motives, casting doubt on my character like I was a stranger invading their sacred space. The family group chats, once a mere background noise, became arenas where I was deliberately excluded. Screens that had connected us now shut me out, and I felt the sting of each silent message, the cold distance in every unread text. Daniel, who had always been my confidant, grew tense under pressure. Relatives tried to involve him, urging him to convince me to let it go, to accept my place quietly. When I confronted Mom, her face was unreadable at first. Then she dismissively said, "You've always been too sensitive, Lexi," as if my feelings were nothing more than imagined drama. That moment, more than anything, gaslit me. The doubt crept in, whispering poisonous lies. Was I really the problem? Was I blowing this all out of proportion? But deep down, I clung to a stubborn truth. Rachel was escalating because I had dared to resist. The golden child's mask was cracking, revealing the entitlement and manipulation beneath. Every whispered word, every sidelong glance, was a calculated move in her campaign to maintain control. The isolation was suffocating, but it also illuminated the raw injustice I faced. They saw me as the troublemaker, the ungrateful one, while Rachel stood untouchable, the favored daughter. The family's loyalty had shifted, and I was left stranded on the outside, fighting against currents I never invited. The battle wasn't just for property or money. It was for recognition, for a place where my sacrifices mattered. And despite the doubt that sometimes gnawed at me, I knew I couldn't back down now. Rachel wouldn't tolerate any challenge to her throne. I needed to confront this head-on. One evening, I gathered the courage to ask Mom and Rachel to meet me at a quiet diner, hoping a neutral place might soften the tension. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fried food, a contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I laid everything out calmly, my voice steady but firm. The payments I'd made, the deeds in my name, my hope for fairness and acknowledgement. I watched Rachel's eyes shift, feigning tears, her voice trembling as she claimed to be the true victim, overshadowed by my supposed bitterness and resentment. It was infuriating, the audacity to paint herself as wounded when I was the one fighting for what was right. Mom, predictably, sided with Rachel, her words like knives. "You need to learn your place, Lexi." The sting of that phrase was sharper than any insult. Rachel's manipulation deepened. She threatened to cut me out completely if I pressed any further, her tone icy and merciless. Aunt Evelyn tried to mediate, her voice gentle but powerless against the family tide. She deflected and deferred to Mom's biased stance. The conversation spiraled into a performance of false tears and righteous victimhood on Rachel's part. leaving me feeling more dismissed and helpless than ever. Walking out of that diner, the weight in my chest was crushing. I had tried to build a bridge, to find peace, but instead, I was met with barricades. The family wasn't interested in truth or fairness. They were united only in preserving Rachel's golden status. My voice, my facts, my sacrifices, they were invisible, irrelevant. I realized then that my hope for reconciliation was a fragile illusion, and the toxic dynamics I'd endured weren't going to change with words alone. The next humiliation came faster than I expected, and it cut deeper than any private slight. At Daniel's company holiday party, a place where I should have felt safe and proud, Rachel found me surrounded by colleagues. Her voice was low but loud enough to slice through the chatter. "You only pretend to be responsible because mom pays your bills." The words hung in the air like poison. A friend, standing nearby, leaned in with concern, asking if it was true. The damage wasn't just emotional. Daniel's respect for me, something I'd taken for granted, was openly questioned. Rachel had done her homework, digging into my personal finances and spreading misleading stories about my debts, painting me as reckless and irresponsible. The whispers spread rapidly, a dark cloud over my professional reputation. Colleagues who had once admired my work exchanged wary glances, their smiles wary, uncertain. Daniel was hurt but steady when he pulled me aside later, his eyes searching mine for answers and strength. I felt exposed and vulnerable, like a secret laid bare in front of strangers. This wasn't sibling rivalry anymore. It was a calculated attack designed to dismantle my life piece by piece. Rachel's cruelty was deliberate, strategic, and merciless. The line between family and foe blurred, and I realized how far she was willing to go. Yet, beneath the humiliation, something hardened inside me. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to find a way through it. But for now, the sting of betrayal and the weight of public doubt pressed down on me relentlessly, making every breath feel heavy and uncertain. Despite everything, I still reached out, desperate for a way to heal the fractured family. At the next gathering, I spoke clearly, my voice steady but vulnerable. "I want us to move past this. I need respect and honesty, nothing more." My words were an olive branch extended toward Rachel, a chance for her to step back from the edge. But instead of acceptance, she laughed, cold, sharp, and dismissive. "Respect isn't earned by money, Lexi. It's earned by being family," she sneered, as if my sacrifices were meaningless in the face of her entitlement. Her laughter echoed louder than any insult, slicing through me with brutal clarity. The rejection stung more than I expected because I had shown vulnerability, and she had met it with cruelty. Daniel squeezed my hand tightly in silent support, his eyes telling me what I already knew. I deserved better than this. That night, as I lay awake, the weight of her words settled deep in my bones. I'd done everything within my power to fix things peacefully, to make space for fairness and understanding. But Rachel's cold rejection made one thing clear. She had no intention of changing, no desire to respect me, no room for truth in her carefully crafted world. The line between us was drawn, bright and unyielding. I wasn't just fighting for a house or money anymore. This was about reclaiming my dignity in a family that had refused to see me. After my quiet stand at the diner, the fallout was swift and brutal. Rachel didn't waste a second twisting the narrative. She told the family I was trying to control everyone and playing the victim card like some ploy to garner sympathy. At first, I thought maybe they'd hear me, see the truth behind my words. But no. One by one, relatives I barely spoke to began to echo Rachel's version. Cousins who used to send birthday wishes now crossed me off their lists. Even Mom, the one person I longed to reach, stopped answering my calls. The silence was deafening. The house I'd kept afloat, the home filled with memories, now felt like a cage closing in. I was the outsider in my own family's story. I sat alone in the dim light of my kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound keeping me company. Daniel was the only one left by my side, his steady presence a fragile lifeline. But even his strength couldn't ease the crushing weight of doubt gnawing at me. Was I really the problem? Had I misread everything? Each whispered conversation, every sidelong glance piled on like bricks, building a wall I couldn't climb. Exhaustion wrapped around me, thick and unyielding. The woman who once bore burdens silently felt herself breaking beneath the strain. Yet beneath the exhaustion, a quiet ember stirred deep inside, a slow-burning fire that refused to die. I wasn't broken. Something inside me was shifting. I was ready to change the game. I just didn't know how yet. The next Sunday at the family dinner, the air was heavy with unspoken judgments and restrained smiles. I forced myself to sit upright, heart pounding so loud it felt like thunder in my chest. Mom stood suddenly, her voice cold and decisive. "The house goes to Rachel. That's final." Her words echoed in the silent room, and without hesitation, heads nodded in agreement, acceptance thick and suffocating. I stayed quiet, but inside, panic surged. I felt all the years of sacrifice, the silent payments, and the invisible labor crash down around me. Then, with hands trembling slightly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a sealed, notarized envelope, the real will from Grandma, tucked away and forgotten for 7 years. The room froze, eyes locked on the paper in my hand like it was some forbidden truth laid bare. Mom's face drained of color. Rachel's confident mask cracked, her jaw tightening as if trying to hold back a storm. I watched the shock ripple across everyone. Friends who rarely showed up, distant relatives, even Aunt Evelyn's quiet gasp. No one spoke at first. The betrayal was absolute. Here they were, all conspirators in erasing me, dismissing every sacrifice I'd made. The air shifted, colder now, heavy with the weight of lies and secrets. And yet, oddly, no chaos erupted. Instead, something deeper settled inside me, a cold, sharp clarity. The veil had lifted. I wasn't a forgotten daughter. I was the rightful heir, wronged and erased by those who should have protected me. Hope died in that room, replaced by a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. That night, alone in the quiet of our living room, I sat clutching the sealed will, staring at the weight of years held between those pages. The sacrifices I'd made, the invisible battles I'd fought, all suddenly converged into a painful clarity. The pattern was undeniable. Rachel's entitlement, Mom's blind favoritism, Dad's stubborn silence. The grief of betrayal mingled with a cold, burning anger that didn't consume me but sharpened me. For the first time, I saw how deeply I'd been manipulated, how carefully my existence had been erased, not just from property, but from family memory itself. I whispered the words slowly, deliberately, as if carving them into my soul. Never again. This anger wasn't the reckless fire of despair. It was the focused steel of survival. The power I held, the proof, the property, the truth, was no longer hidden or a threat. It was my weapon and my shield. The woman who once sought approval was gone. In her place, a fighter was born. That evening, I shared everything with Daniel. The will, the payments I'd made, Rachel's mounting debts, and the betrayal seeping through the walls of my family. His silence as I spoke was steady and unwavering, his steady eyes grounding me. "It's time to act," I said, voice low but firm, the steel of determination threading through every word. Together, we began to sketch out a plan, gather every financial document I'd meticulously kept, consult a lawyer to understand my rights, and prepare to launch a formal audit to expose who truly paid for the house and who tried to erase my contributions. Daniel warned it wouldn't be simple, that battles like these tore families apart, but he trusted my judgment. I named Rachel as the center of this storm. Her manipulations had to end. We agreed the plan should be clear but flexible. I wouldn't rush in blind or impulsive. This wasn't about petty revenge. It was about justice, reclaiming my place and making my voice impossible to ignore any longer. Quietly, I began making calls to legal experts, organizing boxes of bills, receipts, and statements. Each paper was a piece of my truth, a brick in the foundation I would rebuild. Daniel's hand in mine was a steady reminder. I was no longer the invisible sister. I was a woman ready to lead, ready to hold everyone accountable, ready to fight for the family I should never have been pushed out of. I sat at the kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows over the stacks of bank statements and mortgage receipts spread before me. Each paper was a thread in the tangled web of my family's finances. threads I'd quietly managed for years but had never dared to unravel. I started taking inventory, tracing every payment, every transfer, every slip of paper that showed who was really carrying the weight. Rachel acted like she was untouchable, leaning on Mom's charm and the illusion of privilege, but the truth was stark. She'd secretly drained the family accounts to cover her mounting debts. Mom, meanwhile, relied on Rachel's public persona to keep control, blind to the financial storm brewing beneath her polished smile. I pulled out the house deed, the official document confirming the mortgage was, in fact, in my name. The weight of that truth settled heavily on my chest. None of the mortgage payments, those hefty sums, came from Rachel or Mom. I could practically hear the echo of their empty contributions in the silence of those pages. I called my lawyer late into the night, the line crackling with urgency. He confirmed what I already suspected. The deed was mine, and a full forensic audit was not only justified, but necessary. "You have the strength of legal ground," he said. "Now, you need the evidence to back it." I began assembling everything: the tax receipts, bank transfers, even notarized letters Grandma had left behind. Aunt Evelyn had quietly handed me some old paperwork when no one was watching. I found pressure points: Rachel's growing debts, Mom's willingness to hide documents, the fragile alliances holding this family's facade together. They leaned on me more than they realized, more than I ever let on. And that knowledge was a weapon. This wasn't about anger or spite. It was about wielding documented truth to dismantle entitlement and lies. I wasn't just the invisible sister anymore. I was the keeper of evidence, the architect of what was to come. The quiet leverage I now held would become the foundation of my plan. Late that night, as I closed the last folder, exhaustion crept in, but alongside it, an unfamiliar clarity. The family believed they held all the power, but I was the one with the facts. I whispered softly to the darkness, "They need me more than I need them." And for the first time in a long while, I felt a calm resolve settle inside me, a silence before the storm I was about to unleash. The next days were a delicate balancing act. I changed passwords on every shared account, bank logins, utility services, even the online portal for the mortgage. Each new password was a silent declaration of control. At the same time, I updated legal documents, submitting paperwork to confirm the deed standing and hiring Daniel's recommendation for a forensic auditor. We met in the quiet of my apartment, huddled over spreadsheets and family records, plotting every step with precision. "Every detail must be airtight," I told him, my voice steady despite the turmoil roiling beneath the surface. Around the family, I wore my calm facade like armor. At gatherings, I smiled carefully, said nothing about the will or the mounting paperwork. No one suspected I was quietly dismantling the foundation beneath their feet. Rachel's eyes flickered with suspicion, but I kept my distance, answering with neutral words and measured tones. Mom chatted about trivial things, oblivious to the storm building just below her carefully maintained veneer. The tension between Rachel and me simmered quietly. A silent war waged in glances and half words, but I showed no sign of wavering. Sometimes I caught myself staring out the window late at night, listening to the muted sounds of the neighborhood, feeling the weight of what was to come. The family carried on with their routines, unaware that the ticking time bomb beneath our lives was already set. This was the calm before the storm, the quiet breath before the plunge. I was ready to strike when the moment was right, armed with irrefutable proof, and a plan forged in patience and pain. One afternoon, while sorting through dusty boxes in Grandma's attic, I was startled by Aunt Evelyn's sudden presence beside me. She held out a manila folder with a seriousness I hadn't expected. "You need to see this," she said quietly, her eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and warning. Inside were faded letters and fragile legal papers, yellowed with time, but heavy with meaning. As I read, a cold chill ran down my spine. Rachel's past manipulation wasn't new. It was a pattern. 3 women from the neighboring town, all former friends or distant cousins, had been systematically cut out of inheritances and family businesses, thanks to her calculated schemes. One letter was from Linda Matthews, one of Rachel's previous victims, who had come forward after hearing about my battle. Her words confirmed my suspicions. Rachel's cruelty was habitual, not personal. It was a mechanism she wielded to maintain control and entitlement, a legacy of deception that stretched far beyond our family. The weight of this revelation hit me hard. I wasn't alone. Rachel's pattern of abuse had hurt others, and now I was standing against a dark tradition she had worked to keep hidden. I felt the family's carefully constructed facade crack wider in my eyes. The betrayal wasn't just mine, it was collective, a history of manipulation cloaked in charm. My moral position became unassailable. This wasn't merely a fight for the house or my place in the family. It was a battle for justice, to expose a legacy of lies and entitlement. The urgency inside me swelled, and a fierce determination took root. The audit and confrontation I planned would reveal far more than just property disputes. It would tear the masks off a long-hidden truth, no matter the cost. That night, I sat clutching the folder, the weight of the past pressing down like an iron vise on my chest. The knowledge I'd uncovered gave me strength, but also a burning clarity. This was no longer about forgiveness or reconciliation. This was about standing up for every woman Rachel had wronged, including myself. I whispered to the empty room, "This ends now." The first moves were deliberate and cold. I stopped making payments on joint family expenses, the mortgage, utilities, everything. I notified the mortgage company of the true ownership, making it clear who was responsible moving forward. It felt like cutting a lifeline, but the relief was immediate. Rachel and Mom were blindsided when checks bounced and bills went unpaid, but they didn't connect the dots to me. I was careful, sending formal legal notices outlining my claims and warning of an impending audit. Rachel's reaction was swift. The first real consequence she faced was the tightening scrutiny on her credit lines. Lenders began calling, questioning irregularities I'd uncovered. I stayed composed at every family event, attending as if nothing had changed. But inside I was ice cold and focused. Daniel noticed the shift in me, the calm, methodical control I'd taken on. He was my anchor, supporting each step with quiet strength. Whispers spread through the family, hushed conversations about the sudden financial troubles. Most assumed it was just another chapter in Rachel's usual drama, blind to the calculated pressure mounting beneath the surface. But I knew better. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a force. The quiet tension in the air felt electric, a prelude to a reckoning. I had taken the first steps, and the game had irrevocably changed. The woman who had once been invisible was now a decisive power, setting the stage for everything to come. The living room buzzed with forced cheer as family gathered, the usual clinking of glasses and muted chatter filling the air. But beneath the surface, I felt the tension coil tighter with every passing second. Tonight was the night. Calmly, I rose, the weight of the envelope heavy in my hand. Aunt Evelyn's steady gaze met mine, and Daniel's silent nod gave me the courage to speak the words I'd rehearsed countless times. "I have something to share," I began, voice clear and unwavering. I laid out the evidence with meticulous care, the financial audit showing years of mortgage payments, the deed recorded in my name, Grandma's will, notarized and untouched. The room shifted. Whispers hushed as everyone absorbed the undeniable truth. I watched Rachel's confident mask crumble, her lips parting and closing as if searching for words that wouldn't come. "That's not... You can't prove..." she stammered, faltering under the weight of facts. Mom sat frozen, her face paling, guilt flickering like a shadow across her features. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, as family members exchanged stunned glances. I held their gaze, voice steady, lower but firm. The house has always been mine. Every attempt to erase me was deliberate and fraudulent. There was no anger in my tone, only a cold authority that settled in the room like winter's chill. From this moment forward, respect is non-negotiable. No more lies, no more favoritism. For years I'd been invisible, a ghost within my own family, but now I stood tall, the rightful heir claiming her place. The power balance shifted palpably. Rachel's entitlement shattered, her influence slipping like sand through desperate fingers. Some family members nodded quietly, others remained stunned, but all bore witness to the reversal. I didn't need to raise my voice or accuse. The proof spoke louder than any outburst. Tonight, I was no longer the overlooked sister. I was Lexi Webster, the woman who had reclaimed her dignity with unyielding grace. The fallout was immediate and ruthless. Lenders began calling Rachel, creditors tightening their grip as the audit exposed discrepancies she could no longer hide. Whispers of foreclosures and mounting debts wove through the family like wildfire. I heard distant murmurs of shock and betrayal, but I stayed distant, refusing to let the chaos draw me in. Mom's credibility crumbled among relatives who felt deceived by her complicity. Her once unquestioned loyalty to Rachel, now a source of shame. Rachel's frantic texts and calls flooded my phone. Pleas for forgiveness, promises to change, but I ignored them, steel-clad against manipulation. Daniel and I drew tighter boundaries around ourselves, guarding our peace like a fortress. Private messages from family members unsure where their loyalties should lie trickled in. Some sought clarity, others offered quiet support. I responded with measured honesty, neither inviting false reconciliations nor condemning without cause. The foundation of our family trembled beneath the weight of exposed truths. Rachel's desperate attempts to regain control only served to isolate her further, her social circles shrinking as financial ruin and public humiliation closed in. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that justice was unfolding, sorrow for the family fractured by years of deceit. Rachel's decline was marked by escalating desperation. Threats surfaced, legal battles, accusations of defamation, all designed to intimidate Daniel and me. She mobilized her loyalists to pressure us socially and professionally, painting herself as the victim in public posts that twisted reality with practiced ease. But I was ready. Every claim she made was countered with facts. Each attempt at emotional blackmail met with silent refusal. I refused to engage with manipulative drama, knowing that truth was my strongest armor. Slowly, some family members who had turned blind eyes began reaching out with apologies, their voices tinged with regret for their earlier blindness. I accepted a few apologies but made clear that trust would have to be rebuilt, brick by deliberate brick. Rachel's isolation deepened as her once confident facade cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. Allies slipped away, unable to ignore the mounting legal scrutiny and public exposure. Her attempts to manipulate the narrative failed utterly, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. I watched from a distance, steady and resolute, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. This was not about vengeance. It was about holding firm to boundaries I'd fought so hard to establish. The woman who had tried to erase me was unraveling, undone by the unwavering truth I refused to let go. 6 months later, the echoes of conflict have softened into a quiet calm I never imagined I'd find. Family gatherings are smaller now, more subdued, with Rachel's absence a silent testament to the new order. Mom and Dad, still distant but resigned, have accepted the reality I carved out with facts and courage. Daniel and I are stronger, our partnership a solid foundation of respect and honesty. I've drawn clear boundaries, limited contact with family, on my terms, and only where respect exists. The house, legally and emotionally mine, stands as a monument to resilience rather than pain. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. I focus now on building a future where my contributions are visible, my dignity unquestioned. I am no longer the quiet provider, the overlooked sister lost in family shadows. I am Lexi Webster, a woman who fought with intelligence and grace for her rightful place in a legacy once stolen. The journey was painful, the betrayal deep, but the peace I've found is worth every wound. The family learned their lessons the hard way, but I'm free. Free to live without apology, free to be seen, respected, and finally, at peace.